everyone. This is Annalisa with Journey to the Goddess TV, where I regenerate ancient feminine wisdom for modern women. Today, I'm thrilled to have with me a very special guest, Acharya Shunya. Acharya Shunya is a renowned teacher and founder of the California-based Awaken Self Foundation and Vedika Global, who has tens of thousands of students worldwide. She's also a best-selling author whose newest book, Roar Like a Goddess, was published in September by Sounds True. The first female lineage holder in her Vedic tradition, Shunya's new book is not a routine book on Hindu goddesses, but a blueprint for modern liberated womanhood and personhood explored through goddess archetypal theory. So thank you again for being here. I'm delighted to have you. And before we get...
It's an honor. Thank you.
You're welcome. So before we get into the Q&A, I've invited Acharya to offer an invocation today. So this is the moment to do that if you would like to do that.
I would like to bring the goddess in this conversation, and I'm going to remember her by chanting a mantra, special sounds that evoke her grace, her protection, and her power. Om Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarvartha Sadike Sharanye Triambake Gauri Narayani Namostute Narayani Namostute Narayani Namostute. We invoke her as Narayani, the one who dwells in the heart of every sentient creature. Not just us human beings, but even the tiniest ant got the goddess, so that the goddess can bless and protect us from within.
Thank you. Wow. Well, we had originally set up this conversation for Tuesday, November 8th, which was the full moon lunar eclipse. And when we met, we were unable to do the interview. And at that point, we had discussed about talking about what the energies were like that day and what we think was happening and maybe why we're here today instead of on the 8th.
Yeah, I remember. I'm in India, and the moon was eclipsed, and there were dark clouds, and there was unseasonal thunder and rain and violent winds howling everywhere. And I was all set to have this conversation with you, but instead the atmosphere around me was so significantly suggestive of just being still and being inward. Because the eclipsed moon is a very special time to connect with the goddess, because when the moon is out and there is light of the moon, it's like our ego self or our mind is out in the world. But when there is this darkness, there is only another kind of light that we can connect with, and that's the inner light. That's the goddess light. Mm. And that's why we just had this brief conversation, almost in awe of the eclipse, and this decision to reconnect later, when we're just like walking around with our functional brains and our functional nervous system. And literally that night, we also had an earthquake.
Oh, I had.
It was like almost 6 point something where I live, and my entire bed was shaking. I'm like, okay, goddess, thank you. I think she reminded me of her Shakti, her power, and the impermanence of our worlds and our plans and our schedules and our calendars. But it was she who prevailed, and I really milked that darkness. And and I could really feel something shift within me. And I'm glad that I did check in with you briefly, and we both agreed, wow, let's reconnect later.
Yes, because I was feeling quite off my center too, and also at that moment feeling like I really needed to be internal and just be with myself. And quite literally, when you showed up on the Zoom, your screen was black, so it was like, in a way, like you were also representing that for me in that moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for that reflection as we kind of move now into your book. So I've noticed that you talk about something called goddess archetypal theory. And I was wondering if you could basically describe what that is.
I grew up in a culture worshiping the goddess. We have countless deities, all representing really one non dual feminine Shakti, but we have the privilege and the encouragement to connect with that one power, one divine power in any form we wish, and she comes to us through beloved forms. But as I moved on in my life, as I grew up, as I dealt with life's curveballs, as I dealt with rejection and invisibility because of patriarchy ruling our planet, I realized that I was calling these goddesses to mind, and I was remembering their stories and how they dealt with obstacles in their life. And interestingly, they too met with invisibility, rejection, sexual objectification in their mythology. And I thought, wow, that's so interesting. But they responded in discerned ways, in wise ways, and amazingly powerful ways that included rage, that included self celebration, that included a radical self acceptance and an announcement to the world, here I am, and no shrinking. And there was sexuality, and there was passion, and there was kindness and generosity, and they were complete women. So my contemplations for a couple of decades on these goddesses, their mythology, my what I drew from that contemplation to apply in my modern contemporary life, and then using those same teachings to help my contemporary students of every gender, binary and non-binary, all over the world, with different religious or non-religious, agnostic, atheistic backgrounds, and yet using these teachings to bring up a healthy, awakened mind and an awakened being within us to deal with relationship challenges, professional challenges, health challenges. And you could still be like a goddess and roar like a goddess, really, which is the authentic voice. Well, then I put all this together into what's called as the theory of archetypes, because I saw that there were three broad archetypes. The archetype called Goddess Durga, that we need to begin with, because in case we've given away our power, or we're not in touch with it, or we're afraid of it, or we are under somebody else's power in an unhealthy way, well, we need to call for Durga's teachings, Durga's symbolism, Durga's story, literally, to awaken that power within us. And then there is the Lakshmi archetype, because now that we are powerful, we also need to play. Playfulness is important. And at the same time, a balanced pursuit of all our goals, pleasure as well as purpose, both need to come in together. And I found the Lakshmi goddess and her teachings to be immensely helpful in that area. So she's my second archetype. And finally, we're powerful, we are playful, we are purposeful. Now what? Well, now we have to journey inwards and find our inner yogini, inner monk, the inner person who we discover through meditation, contemplation, reflection, solitude. And she arises within us as intuition and wisdom which is beyond our age and gender and culture. It's something we know from deep within, not from a book. And the Saraswati goddess was a beautiful archetype for that. So I put all this together. This is my original teaching. This cannot be found in any books in English or Sanskrit or any other language till now, because these literally arose within the domains of my heart over 4 decades of dealing with life situations and then pulling out a goddess card, literally, metaphorically, to address that situation. And the book is born, and the rest is history.
It's such an inspiring title, too. I'm wondering if you would like to share even just a little bit more about your journey to finding your own authentic voice and your work.
I was born in a progressive family. I'm really glad. We're more progressive than progressive people all over the world, or we're equally progressive. But I was born in a culture that was not progressive, that was patriarchal, that had specific expectations from women and clear cut roles. And at best, it was condescending. And at its worst, it was traumatizing. When I left my family of origin, where I received great Vedic wisdom, I was born into a family of legendary teachers who are respected till date in northern India. I have a lineage of teachers that goes back 2,000 years. My grandfather, great grandfather, father are illustrious people in India. And I was the first female head of that lineage. I was all excited to go out there, and I was gonna be and become the person I imagined myself to be. And I never thought my gender would play a role, except when I left that house. I had a reality check. There were countless people who questioned why this ancient title had been given to me. And because we are a householder lineage, we are not celibates. We take on lovers or partners or husbands and wives. A partner was chosen for me, a husband, but with due respect to whatever he brought, which was beautiful and good in our relationship, he also was conditioned by patriarchy to limit my sky, to clip my wings, to shame me and blame me for just being me. And for a while there, I was lost. And I suffered the pain that every woman and every person who has ever been judged or rejected or made invisible just because of their genitals or their color is made to feel, for no other reason but for the fact that I'm a woman, that I was never enough as a teacher, never enough as a wife, never enough as a mother. And I did lose myself briefly, emotionally. And that was so instructive for me because I had other knowledge of non-dual teachings, yoga, Ayurveda, and I wasn't lost for long. I was curious about this lostness. I questioned this lostness. I think I was a sleeping goddess in that lostness, and that immense darkness and turbulence of my emotions woke up that goddess, and she roared and she said, okay, I haven't come here to toe the line, especially if that line is non-dharmic, non-ethical, not real, not good, not okay for the rest of the world. And I walked that journey alone for a while there, just believing in myself until the world began believing in me. And those same family members who had once rejected me or blamed me or shamed me are maybe even my students now. So
Wow.
life has come on 360 degrees.
Yes.
For a roaring goddess woman. Yeah.
I love this quality you named, the sleeping goddess, because it seems that, well, on the one hand, it seems like many of us are in that state, but it also says that we're all goddesses in waiting, whether we found our voices or not, or whether we find them and then go back into sleep and find them and go back and forth. So I love that sleeping goddess image. Just really, I don't know, it hits a chord for me because it reminds me of the potential, even if I'm in a moment where I haven't been able to find my voice yet. It's like it's still possible. You can find it.
Absolutely. And for a lot of us, I bet for a lot of people who regularly listen to your podcast, that goddess is stirring from time to time. And she's no longer willing to not make herself known. And books like mine, which are based on conviction and truth and not just some imagined possibilities or superstition or any of that. It's the real stuff, the real deal that any woman and any person who has ever been disempowered needs to know. For example, about boundaries or respect, or about the permissions we can give ourselves around sexuality and pleasure. These teachings literally undo the bondages that we've put in ourselves, because those are just beliefs, those bondages, and we just believed it to be true. And then you read this book or you listen to the audible version of it, and people have told me it's like those imaginary ropes are just snapping, and we give ourselves permission. In fact, these stories that I share in the book, I want to share with you, are said to be magical stories. And whoever hears these stories never remains the same, because their goddess wakes up and she roars with conviction, with pleasure, and with peace.
One of the stories you tell in the book of Sati, and I know you'd say that it's one of your favorite stories, and it's one of mine as well. And every time I read it in a book or even recount it to a friend, I always feel this like electrical charge in my body. I feel fired up. So I was hoping that you'd be willing to tell us the story today, and maybe just talk a little bit more about Sati.
Goddess Sati is none other but Goddess Durga in one of her other forms. And Sati's story is the story that is awaiting every woman. One day, all of us will become Sati. And we become Sati when we act like her with conviction. And what did she do? There was a couple, a king and queen of the Himalayan mountains, who were really yearning for a child. And they prayed and they worshipped and they meditated and they cried and they begged. And finally, the Divine Mother, Shakti, said, okay, I think I'm just going to fulfill their desires. And she was born as their daughter, who was named Sati. And the daughter, the infant, like spoke up, which is very unusual. And she said, I am divine, your divine mother Shakti. I am that ultimate, reality. She let people know, but I've come here as your daughter. And I'll stay with you because I love you and I'm going to fulfill your desires. But I'll stay with you only as long as you respect me. That's my only condition. And the parents, doting parents, said, of course. And, for a while, everybody talked about that, unusual event that happened, and people were in awe of that infant. But as the child grew and she played and she hopped and she skipped and she jumped and she made jokes, she was like any other girl, a tiny little cute princess. And gradually, people's memory faded away, and she was raised like any of us, like you and me and all our listeners. So she was just like any other daughter in a special home. She was a Princess Sati. But when it was time to marry, as she came into her youth, she started pining for a yogi known as Shiva, who meditated in the very high peaks, the frozen peaks of the Himalayas. Some people had seen him, some had not seen him. There were rumors about him that he is not just a yogi, he's God incarnate, but he was really just the other half of Shakti, because Shakti and Shiva are the divine masculine, divine feminine principles. And so she started yearning and she insisted she'll marry Shiva. The king and queen were not pleased. They wanted her to marry some rich royal prince or king, but she insisted. And, she married that hermit. And after the marriage, she took off her royal clothes and wore simple yogini outfit and decorated her body with flowers instead of gold and diamond necklaces. And she went, with him, and she lived a couple of years very happily, very content. The divine couple, the divine feminine, divine masculine together. And and they taught the world about sexuality and art and Ayurveda and yoga. So we have these charged conversations which gave birth to a lot of disciplines and traditions which are now known in the world, such as Ayurveda, Tantra, yoga, meditation. This was a conversation that happened between Shakti and Sati and Shiva, or Shakti and Shiva. Except that one fated day, um, Sati found that the moon god and his two wives, all dressed up, were traveling across the galaxy. And Sati said, "Hey, where are you going?" And they said, "Oh, don't you know your dad has thrown this big feast and this big fire ritual, which is a holy ceremony amongst the Hindus, and everybody who's a who's who in the cosmos has been invited. We'll see you there." But Sati was furious. She realized that her father had skipped an invitation to his only daughter and son in law. So she showed up at their house and she said, "Hey, what's going on?" And her father said very directly to her, "Your husband is an embarrassment. Look at what he wears. He has snakes crawling around his neck. He wears a lion skin around his lower body, and he has nothing to his name. And here we have kings and queens and gods and goddesses as guests. So it's going to be embarrassing to have him over. But now that you're here, why don't you stay and why don't you ask your mom for an outfit so that you can, fit in?" Sati was in no interest to fit in, because Sati had fitted in until now because she had thought she was respected. She realized that she had been disrespected. And at that very moment, the goddess from within Sati's body, which is Shakti, became this fiery flame, and she erupted as a fiery flame that went upwards towards the heavens and disappeared. And as she left, the king, the sobbing king and queen, heard this voice that, "Here, have this daughter's body that you once wanted, then you respected, then you disrespected. You can have it." And Sati's body lay in a heap of burning ashes, while the essence, which is the goddess spirit essence, had left. And this story gave both of us the goosebumps. I wonder if our listeners also thought, wow, this is such an amazing story, but at the same time, such a macabre story. But that's why I feel it is significant, because by reducing that body to nothing but ashes, she had really ignited and set aflame that very body through which the disrespectful transaction and attachment had occurred.
Mm.
So here, let it go. And by knowing that story, contemplating on it, the permissions I gave myself was that I often ignite and burn to ashes false agreements that I may have made in relationships. I burn to ashes those attachments which are nothing but delusions that I had been carrying around. And ever so often, I'm standing with ashes of relationships around me, and yet I am fully empowered like a goddess within. And I wonder if you experience fear on reading this story. Maybe our listeners will benefit from knowing how did you react and what permission did this story give you?
Yeah, for me, I think it feels like the potential, like it's something that I'm yearning to embody inside of me. And kind of, I guess, not just embody the energy, but then act that out in a way, whether that means, as you're saying, like burning up these false agreements, or these kind of inauthentic or not aligned relationships where I may have been a people pleaser, or I'm just not being true to my authentic voice. So I feel that yearning to embody it where I'm not fully there yet, or I've had glimpses of it maybe.
But how fortunate to have that yearning, or even to have that inclination, or even to have that inspiration or archetype, that it's a possibility. Because for so long, women were told that to keep our marriages intact, to keep our relationships intact with our in laws and with our parents was our number one responsibility. And no matter what we were feeling, we had to keep, smiling, and we had to keep cooking because that was the way to the man's heart. And we had to be dutiful. And while we were doing all this, we also had to cross our legs in a certain way and sit and be prim and proper. And now we have this bold, brazen, and almost shockingly different archetype, which is timeless from the Hindu tradition. And yet I found the Hindu woman worshiping the goddess, but not living like her.
Right.
And that's where I felt this gap. And I felt like there's a difference between me and them. Because you won't quickly find me in a temple, but you'll definitely find me cleaning up the residue of dysfunctional relationships. And as a result, enjoying healthy ones in my life. And to just have that archetype, or even that yearning, as you say, is so important. And if we recall the story every night, if we are in a disempowered relationship, as some of my students have done, when they're stuck in codependent relationships, abusive situations, or even parents who are toxic, just recalling this story allows us to have a healthy distance from those relationships. We're able to reclaim our emotional space, our head space. We're able to think for ourselves. And if not actually, of course, but internally, we are able to set fire to these unhealthy expectations that we've been carrying around to somehow deliver in that relationship.
Right.
And that helps. That helps.
I wonder too, something occurred to me as you were talking, because you make this distinction in the book between worshiping a goddess who's out there, or any number of gods or goddesses out there as a separate entity, versus understanding that the goddess is within you, that the power of that goddess, her archetype, is in you. And I'm wondering if maybe the women, as you're describing them, that don't basically embody that power, do you feel like it's because they only worship the goddess on the outside, they only see her as out there outside of them?
That's true. And an ideal relationship with a goddess is both of a worshiping one and as an archetype of wisdom and training to be a goddess. Because why miss that devotional aspect? Because she is our mother. And I have benefited both from grace and her wisdom. Sometimes I roar like her and I'm walking her path, but the days when I'm scared and I'm like a curled up fetus, then I'm in her womb thinking about her. But when we separate the goddess and we live in a patriarchal culture, that the woman in the house or the woman on the street are subservient, and the woman like God in the temple is great. There's no meeting place. But in my book, I brought the deities a bit below. I brought them closer to earth, and I uplifted the women on earth. So we actually have a union here. We're not just forever separate. And that is what the patriarchal masculine religions have done. They've separated the God essence and made us women so remote from any divinity. But it's changing worldwide. And I think I'm one of those forerunners in my culture, at least for Indian women, that don't just worship her. You worship her, that's a source of strength for you, for sure. But why not now begin to talk like her? Begin to assert yourself like her. Or be like Lakshmi and choose your partner wisely, or even change your mind about your relationships and have beautiful sexual relationships like her. So uh, for me, it was like I had hit a bounty of permissions that my shrunk self needed to come into my own. I'm a very different person from who I was um, some time
Yeah,
ago.
yeah, it's very evident when you when we follow your story through the book too. It's very empowering. You also at the opening of the book, you talk about basically kind of like what comes to mind for most people when we say the word goddess is like only a drop in the pail, a drop of water in the pail of what goddesses actually are. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that just a little bit too, because I really want people to understand. Like, this is one of the reasons I'm personally drawn to the Hindu goddesses, because there's such a full bodied totality to what they represent.
The goddess represents the highest intelligence in a feminine attribute, and that highest intelligence is pure consciousness, which is intelligent existence unto itself. And this intelligence is both outside the known creation and inside it, and dwells in our hearts too. It is this same divine feminine intelligence that is responsible for all the millions of galaxies, and right down to the intelligence in the blade of the grass, in a blade of grass. And she dwells within us. The only difference between a blade of grass and a human mind is that the blade of grass is in total surrender and totally follows her laws, the laws of nature, whereas we have been given the potential to doubt, to question, which is a good thing. But we're going through a phase of feeling estranged from that intelligence. So we put her outside. Some of us totally denied that intelligence, and then some of us deified it, and then some of us began roaring with it, living with it. And this intelligence is so powerful that it cannot be reduced to one form alone. She will come to you as Goddess Sophia. She will come to you as Goddess Mary. She will come to you as the goddess of any culture, any colors, any robes you imagine, because your imagination is powerful, but that intelligence is one. And it's going to come to you in the form of that form. The archetypes are important because for thousands of years, she has been imagined collectively by 1 billion people on earth in that form as Durga, holding those weapons, riding a lion. That helps. But at the end of the day, to think that she doesn't exist is to think that then you don't exist. If this universe exists, if you exist, if your awareness is there, then the intelligence that fuels all of this in a nurturing way exists. And that nurturer is Shakti. Shakti literally means power, the enabler. She dwells in each one of us. In fact, my teachings in my future book coming up is how we can access her through our chakras in special forms. And of course, through this book, through her stories and through contemplation on them. For a long time, we're asleep. But the moment we start waking up, and for some of our listeners, it may be happening right now, then her grace and her knowledge and her wisdom is available. And through the writing of this book and by being on the world stage with this book, I've met now countless scholars, teachers, podcasters, authors who are channeling the divine feminine through different forms. through trees, through plants, through different goddess types, from Africa to Arabia to, of course, the Americas. So she's happening. It's a vivid phenomena. You may be asleep to it for a while, and then you'll notice it everywhere because she is a truth. And the best part is she dwells very close to you, inside you. Yeah. I hope I did justice.
Oh, you did. You did. And it actually is a good segue to another question that I had, because Dharma, the word Dharma, plays such a big role in your book, more so than in any other book I've read on the Hindu goddesses. So I'm wondering, can you describe what Dharma means and how it arises for each goddess, and how women can embody Dharma?
Dharma is a Sanskrit word. It comes from the root Sanskrit word dhri, which means to sustain, to hold, to nurture, to make firm. And dharma is something that we share with every being. Like in this world right now, you have a dharma, I have a dharma, a tiny spider has a dharma, and we all have to play our role so that the universe can continue, so that it can continue to manifest, continue to be held, and continue to dissolve. So it's all happening in this present moment. So it is said that dharma sustains this universe. And we are all expected to act in dharmic ways so that we don't annihilate ourselves and our planet and our community and our society. Oftentimes, when we lead a feminist cry, sometimes it can be anti men, which is not true. It's a misinterpretation of feminism. But sometimes, when we are rising in our power, we need to push someone down. It just happens, it's natural. Like one sister rises, she's going to push the other sister down, or the sisters rise together, they'll push the brothers down. Somebody, it's always an act of balance. But dharma says no, don't act until everyone wins. Or even if you are punishing someone, or even if you are raging against someone, or if you are saying no to someone, if it should come from considered dharma. Sometimes as a teacher, I have to punish or have to use words that are punishing to a student, like, I will not teach you, or you are not worthy of being around me to study. You can find me somewhere else, but not directly. When that happens, I'm doing that for some greater dharmic reason and not personal vengeance. So dharma is a consideration for the growth of our beingness. I would never write a book which only allows the individual ego to grow and expand itself and become gregarious in its own strength, because then it's going to suck the strength from others. So, dharma is something we feel in our heart. Dharma is connected with authenticity, but dharma is also connected with sensitivity. Sometimes, in the name of authenticity, we can be cruel, we can be narcissistic, we can be hurtful, we can be insensitive. But I, like my goddesses, I saw in them power as well as care, strength as well as generosity, individualism, and yet a concern for the community. And that is why dharma is important. And Durga teaches the dharma of using your rage, using your voice, using your strength for the benefit of the planet, for all beings, and even for those creatures who don't have a voice. Let us become a voice for them. Lakshmi teaches us the dharma of um, honestly earned wealth and well-deserved pleasure, all within an ethical basket or foundation, not unethical, not the kind that sabotages our journey and hurts the universe. And Saraswati teaches us the dharma of self-recognition and self-actualization, but with a concern for the collective awakening and the collective inspiration. The teachings of dharma make my book not just about the individual uprising, but a collective awakening.
Right. So learning to embody your inner power or allow your inner power to arise within you, finding your authentic voice, roaring like a goddess is not only for your self betterment, but for the betterment of everybody, the entire world.
Exactly. Beautifully said. Yes.
There was one question I want to make sure I don't forget it because it was kind of an ecological minded question. Oh, that's right. Okay. So I've been swirling around my mind. There's some patterns that I see in world mythologies bouncing off of the story you told earlier about Sati. There's a similar theme in Greek mythology with the Greek goddess Demeter, and in Yoruban mythology with Oshun, where there's some kind of disrespect against them that occurs, and it's oftentimes by male figures, but not all the time, in which the reaction of the goddess is to then kind of withdraw her life force from the world. Demeter goes into her temple, and as she withdraws her life force, the plants start to slowly wither. Same thing with Oshun. And there's something about this pattern that I see, and the following part of the Sati story, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Shiva's grief when he finds out is so immense that the universe starts shaking. And so that's for me kind of how that fits into that pattern, is the world becomes unstable. And so I wonder, it's almost like there's an ecological message running through these stories where it's like the divine feminine Shakti, however she is pictured in each one of these cultures, they're telling us that if she is disrespected in any of her forms, that I don't know if it's the right word is consequences, but something will happen. That the disrespect has a consequence. And I'm wondering if that resonates at all for you, or if you have anything to say in response to that.
Totally. Thank you for picking up on that. Although I haven't talked about it, this is a very heavy theme in the Vedic goddess teachings because the goddess is Mother Nature incarnate. And in fact, Lakshmi is none other but Earth or Prithvi. Earth goddess is Lakshmi.
Mm.
And these goddesses, the divine feminine is what is nature. And not only the nature outside, but the nature within us, the laws and intelligence within us also starts shriveling and becomes disrupted. And as a result, when the goddess is upset, she's also what we see is the proliferation of diseases, epidemics, and personal mental breakdown, collective and individual mental suffering goes up. And there are diseases classified in Ayurveda, which is the Vedic system of health and healing, which are said to be the direct result of offending any woman who is the daughter of the goddess, or offending the goddess within any being. And so that's so interesting. And many a times in the early days, when people were diseased, they would go to the goddess, and this is not superstition. They would say, "What ecological blunder have we done?" And people would remember they cut down a tree. And the Vedas said that you should sacrifice 10 sons of yours before you sacrifice a single tree. That's what the Vedas say. So there's a very direct connection. It's a living connection in India, not even a hypothetical connection or a thought, just a belief connection. It's a living connection. And in every story, in many stories, we find the same thing. Earth is trembling. That's the word they use. Mountains are falling off their base. Rivers are shriveling up. And all these weird ecological, seasonally disruptive things are happening when the goddess is upset. And the contemplation that we can draw from that is that bring reverence and respect towards your own higher self, which is a representative of this divine feminine. Bring ecological awareness outside to planet Earth and to us, to nature. And you can also go there to restore yourself, but bring respect and reverence there. The word is reverence. And then to bring reverence towards yourself. And the highest form of worship is known as, in Sanskrit, Atma Nivedanam, which literally means reverence of your own true self.
Wow.
So that you can keep the goddess within you really on her throne. And so, how astute of you to pick that up. And at the same time, it gives us an opportunity to explore how connected the goddess world is with ecology. Whereas when we're not with these goddesses, we are plundering nature, we are plundering our environment. And the power that the masculine version of spirituality promotes is at the cost of another, whereas the feminine power is collaborative and
Right.
it works from inside out.
Right.
And probably we are moving back towards it, because I feel I've been seeing that worldwide women are leading that charge.
Yes, I just got goosebumps again. Yes. Yes. And I even see it when I read modern ecological literature, that is the mindset of how they're starting to see how the planet works through the Western scientific lens now. That it's collaborative and interdependent and co-supportive. And instead of this old paradigm where, survival of the fittest, all the animals are competing for the top. No, that's an old paradigm that's going out of style now. They see that was an incorrect way of looking.
Yeah. We're growing up.
Yeah. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Well, I want to start wrapping up here because it's been about an hour, and I'm just so thankful to have you here. But before we go, I want to know if there's anything else in your heart that you would like to share that we haven't discussed today.
I'm always sensitive to who I'm talking to, and I really appreciated your energy. Thank you. There is a stillness and a beauty there, which I notice. So many blessings to you for the work you are doing, for making people aware of their divine feminine strength. This is not in hostility to the divine masculine, because the goddesses work in cooperation and collaboration. And there is no conflict up there. We just made it up down here.
Right.
It's a
Right.
beautiful universe. Yeah, it's a collaborative universe. But the more a person, including men, if they're listening to us right now, discover their divine feminine essence, the more enriched they will feel, supported from within. Their sleep will improve, joy will enhance, and they will feel safe and secure from within. So I invite everyone, whatever be your gender, to discover the goddess within. Whatever book helps you awaken her, please read that. If mine does, go for it. And then roar. Let's begin roaring, because roaring I compare to an authoritative voice on the planet. It has no excuses. Let us no longer have excuses, and let us embrace each other and the goddess within each other. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope to wake up roaring one of these mornings. That would be the greatest gift. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. And I feel so blessed to be in conversation with you. I learned a lot today. To learn more about Acharya's work, or to purchase her books, or study with her, or listen to her podcast, attend events, or even contact her, please visit acharyashunya.com, which will also be listed in the YouTube text box below. Thank you, everybody. I hope that our conversation enlivened you in some way, introduced you to the goddess in a new way, or inspired you in some way to find your own authentic voice, your own roar. So if you like this video, please hit like, please share, please leave a comment, and please subscribe to the channel. And until next time, see you. Ciao.